We want to welcome you to Focus on Liberia. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. And indeed, this is Focus on Liberia. Today is Saturday and it's our program FOL Marketplace that focus on Liberia Marketplace. Focus on Liberia Marketplace is a business and economic forum where we discuss issues about business and economics. My name is Anthony Sie. I have Mr. William Bernard King is here, who is the host of this program, FOL Marketplace. Also, the big man of Focus on Liberia, Mr. Dennis Ja, is here. And we are honored to have our former finance minister, the Honorable Boima Kamara, as our guest. And today we are discussing Liberia's current debt envelope, if you like. I'm not a finance guy. I don't know I should be using language that I don't know anything about. But hey, welcome. And we are here. I will now turn things over to my man, William Bernarkin. William, I'm excited. I don't know about you. How is California, by the way?
Oh, thank you so much, Anthony. I want to thank all of our viewers for joining us, all of our fans, those who are on Facebook. We want to ask you to please make sure that you share. Today, our topic, Liberia's debt, where is that, is going to be very interesting. To answer the question, Mr. Sia in California is another beautiful sunny day, sunny California. Although with that sun comes some fires. And so right now, our prayers and thoughts goes out to those folks who are dealing with the fire. And also, please remember, ladies and gentlemen, that COVID-19 is real. And we look forward to having this show. I'm joined by Dennis Ja and the Honorable Boima S. Kamara, who served as our Minister of Finance for a couple of years. And we're going to be interesting to hearing more about that in 2016 to 2018. And he's been on here writing quite a bit of articles. So he may look like he is quiet, but his pen is very loud and very noisy. So, we're going to turn to Dennis Ja next, and then from there, Mr. Boima will come back to you. Thank you.
We just say welcome, everyone, and welcome to Honorable Boima S. Kamara. Welcome to Focus on Liberia. We're glad to have you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, brethren. And I'm humble to share in Focus on Liberia this afternoon, and to just share my own perspective on Liberia's life after death, the extent to which, as a country, we have natural resources for development, and the extent to which those resources are we properly having value for money as we take on debt. Bear in mind that the essence of the article that I wrote was just to accentuate few issues. Liberia, just by way of some history. Prior to 2010, with the ushering of the Salif administration in 2006, Liberia had a staggering debt of around 5.9 billion.
Yes, Mr. Boima, I know you want to get straight into the meat of this discussion, and people want to hear about that. We'll definitely get into that. Right now,
okay.
What I do want to do is I want to do a couple of little housekeeping things. Number one, I think that for the view, we're going to sacrifice the view, but I think inside your connection was much better. So
Okay.
I will ask you to move or to transition inside so that we don't compromise what you're saying, but we can compromise the visual.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to be reading our disclaimer. While I do that, can you please shift to something else while we get situated? Okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Focus on Liberia. This is the Focus on Liberia Marketplace. The content is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained on our media or written documents constitute a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer by Focus on Liberia or any third-party service provider to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments in this or in any other jurisdiction in which such media material may be shared. All content on this site is information of a general nature and does not address the circumstances of any particular individual or entity. Nothing in the media constitutes professional or financial advice, nor does any information on the platform constitute a comprehensive or competent statement of the matters discussed or the laws related thereto. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, what we are encouraging you to do is always seek your professional advice from a licensed financial advisor, and don't take Focus on Liberia, what we say here, to go and make an investment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We're situated, and I think we're good to go. Boima, you are sounding pretty good. And so please definitely take 2 to 3 minutes to continue what you were saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Once again, I'm humbled to sharing your show Focus on Liberia. Believe these are the sort of platforms we look forward to that discusses our country. Even while you are away from home, you still believe in your country. That's why such platform is raising issues, seeking to know what's happening and how we together can help build our country. So I'm pleased to be here with you this afternoon and to share more light on the article written Liberia, Life After Death.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about, let's take a step back and just let us get to know you. Who are you? Share a bit about yourself, background, where you hail from, growing up in Liberia.
Well, in terms of who I am, I'm Boima Kamara, a guy from a very humble background. I was born in Monrovia in 1974, May 9, and went to school in Liberia from primary, secondary, up to tertiary level. And I graduated from the University of Liberia in 2001 with a summa cum laude in economics and minor mathematics. And on account of our graduation, the former governor of the Central Bank of Liberia, Governor Eli Salibi, who believed in the merit-based system, we were 32 students who were shortlisted on the basis of the honor you graduated. So summa, magna, and cum was the basis upon which I found myself employed at the Central Bank of Liberia in 2002. I'm married. I have 5 kids. My wife is Anthony Nadia Satus Kamara. She's an Anthony Alo. Since then, my service in Liberia started in 2002.
Okay.
So I went through the ranks and file of the Central Bank of Liberia from 2002 up to 2016. So 14 years of my professional life has been within the monetary sector of Liberia. It's where I rose through the ranks from analyst to economist to assistant director, director for research, and then deputy governor for economic policy. And then in 2016 May, I had the opportunity to be appointed by the president to serve as the Minister of Finance that ended the administration in 2017 December. So this is Boima Kamara, whose entire life has been within the fiscal and monetary sector of our country.
Thank you very much. That's pretty impressive, not for you, but I'm speaking about to your lovely wife, 5 kids and being a lawyer. I mean, that one we can see where, you got to be disciplined, man, because that woman is no joke.
All right, you can imagine an economist and a lawyer.
So you mentioned you served for about 2 years, 2016 to 2018.
1 year, 9 months as Minister of Finance.
What was that experience like? What was that? I mean, what was that like?
Well, I took over at a very crucial time in the administration of President Sirleaf, because he was always coming to the end of the administration, and Liberia had come out of the Ebola crisis. We were just reeling out of that crisis. So in terms of the fiscal space, it was very tight. And however, prudent fiscal management and adherence to the public financial management law of Liberia, we had to take several austerity measures just to ensure that the environment in which we operated come out of stay afloat. And we implemented several reform measures to strengthen systems and governance within the government public financial management system, and that cuts across the IFMIS, the Integrated Financial Management System, and that of the debt management system. We thought to have ensured that the system was ready, it had quality assurance, and in that space of time, we had to cut back on expenditures, except for those ones that were priority. We took several measures in terms of limiting travels. If you're going for meeting, the minister plus one, not more than that, just to have lived within the constraints of what we're facing as a country then. And just to let you know, we were also on a program with the IMF, the Extended Credit Facility Program, the IMF. And I would say that one of the achievements of what we did while serving as Minister of Finance was to have successfully ended that program in November of 2017, just before the new administration came in. And that was a decision taken intentionally to give them the space to decide on their own engagement with the IMF as a new administration coming in. Okay, but overall, it was a challenging time. But I believe with the fortitude and the extent to which the technical competence that you brought to the table, we were able to navigate and successfully ended the administration and ensure for a peaceful transition.
Okay. Thank you very much. I got one more, and then I will hand it over to my colleague, Dennis and Anthony. But I wanted to just ask you, we talked about leadership. What teacher or professor impacted you or made you want to get into the public servant career? Was there any professor or teacher?
Well, my entire years of being a student and a person that I looked to that served as an inspiration to me was Mr. Terence Springer. He taught me both at the St. Patrick's and at the university. So he was somebody who really served as an inspiration to me, and Mr. Dobajala. So the two of them, actually, I look up to them as bigger brothers and role models, and they were very helpful along the way. And today, I still see Mr. Kringa. He's here in the Maryland area. So when he sees me, he says, "You see how much I'm proud of you to see you and the achievements." But we can just be grateful to God for such a people, and they are still around helping.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, here you have it, a little bit of introduction about the Honorable Minister Boima S. Kamara, 2016 to 2018. Now, Dennis, I'm going to go to you so that we can start getting into the meat of what we want to talk about.
Right. And
just 1 minute. I want to get my bottle of water.
Yeah. Yes, please do that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia Marketplace. This is where we discuss business, economic, finance. So our guest today is Honorable Boima S. Kamara, that's the former Minister of Finance and Development Planning. We are discussing Liberia's debt. When you owe somebody, that's debt. Liberia has debt. So we're going to be going into that. The former minister has been very active, talking about financial issue, fiscal issue at the, especially at the finance ministry. Also, he has experience working at the Central Bank of Liberia. Put all that together, he's the right person at the right time to discuss these issues. So we're going to be discussing debt. He has written an article, Life After Debt. So we first want to start with a background of this whole idea of debt. When you're in here, when you owe people, they call it credit. So we want to kind of look at what debt is, what are some of the sources of the country's debt, what the process is for the government to be acquiring debt, where the debt coming from. We'll talk about the external and also the domestic debt. And when you get money, when you owe it money, what are you using it for? And then for the country Liberia, what really do we consider as our normal, or what we may call a sustainable debt level? So we'll kind of talk about that, Mr. Kamara. Let's start with, because we are discussing life after death. I know you're a spiritual guy, so life after death, but this one is life after death. And at the end of the show, I want you to pin me a picture of what that life is. But let's start with the whole concept of debt. What is debt?
Well, debt has to do with borrowing, all right? And just as an individual, you go sometimes to the bank and you take loan. As a country, we have the ability to leverage our resources and then acquire debt. It could be doing either in the form from the domestic market, either through the commercial banks. That will be a form of domestic financing of your budget, or you could engage in foreign loan. It could be either concessional, or you may choose to go to the financial market depending on the productivity of the country. The better performing the country is, the greater your ability to borrow. Because any person who will give you money, the question usually they ask you, what is the source? What is your cash flow? All right. In the case of Liberia, we just thought to remind all of us what has been the history of debt in Liberia.
Yeah.
How far have we come after we have hit the completion point in 2010, June, at which time our almost 5 billion debt was waived. And 7 years after that ended the administration between 2010 June and December 2017, our debt stock rose to around 800 million. And then with the new administration, within 2 years, 3 months, the debt has risen to around 1.5 billion.
And we'll go to in these numbers shortly. Let's lay the foundation. When we say Liberia is acquiring debt, who are we borrowing from, and what do we use that money for?
Usually, these debt, like the roads under the former administration, the road from Monrovia to Ganta, the road from Monrovia to Pekiana, that stretch of road, they were all debt that we take from the partners, especially from the World Bank and the African Development Bank. The Fishtown Hapo road connection is also a debt under the ADB. So when we're borrowing, those are the things you want to show forth that will have high economic returns. You see the Mount Hydro power plant, that's another stuff that was destroyed during the war, but it has been brought back to better than pre-war level. But again, in terms of that capacity, it's still low to meeting the electrification needs of the population, especially household. So borrowing, as long as it goes towards things that can cause the economy to grow and create jobs, the better it is.
But you know, the country is not like a company that you borrow money, you make profit, and you are able to pay back. So when the government is borrowing money, where do we expect to get money from to pay that back? Because sometimes you put this thing in project like the highway, that highway is not going to generate any income to say we're going to use that income to pay back the loan that we borrow.
No, it does spur economic activities, and through spurring economic activity, it generates income for government by those people using that route, like from farm to market, bringing in goods. The greater those activities are taking place, government raises revenue through high economic activity. So those are the benefits, all right? You clearly see that in the context of even investment in agriculture, you are borrowing also to take money and put into agriculture. The greater your yield over the time period, that increases agricultural production in certain areas, say cocoa, coffee, and we are exporting them. Every export generates foreign exchange earning for the country. That's how you are benefiting from the loan you are taking them. So Not necessarily that the government, you will say that the rule, what does the rule bring? The derived benefits that come from a rural infrastructure, just like in the United States, eases transport costs, reduces travel time. Those are all economic factors that when you monetize, you clearly see the benefit it brings to the country. And one of the key ingredients when a country decides to borrow, the underlying factor that any borrower will ask you in terms of a financier is the question is how good performing is your economy?
Right.
What is your GDP growth like? How much income are you generating? What is the size of your budget? If the size of our budget is currently around 500 million, the question is to what extent can you borrow, bearing in mind the debt sustainability analysis threshold. So especially on a program with the IMF, there is a threshold, and that threshold is informed by how much the country is growing. If you have a very low growth, you will have a very low ability to borrow.
And you would define that that threshold for us, or in your mind for Liberia, what do we consider as that sustainable debt level? How much debt can we have to operate as a country normally?
Well, a sustainable threshold level is what gives you the ability to repay. That makes it sustainable. All right. In the case of Liberia, the threshold for debt that would not classify you as a high risk debt distressed country is anything above 75%, meaning you are now classified as a hippie country, meaning you are borrowing greater than your ability to generate income from the economy. So it's 75% and above debt to GDP ratio puts you in a very bad state as a high risk debt distressed country. Currently, our ranking by the IMF is we are now in a level we call moderate distress debt carrying country. Prior to the new administration, we're at the low level of debt distress, meaning we're below or somewhere around 30% a debt to GDP ratio. Currently, as you may see in the article, we are around 53% debt to GDP ratio, for which we have been now moved from low to moderate debt distress risk country. That means for us, your debt level of currently of 1.5 billion, we should now be asking ourselves, if we should further borrow, let those borrowing not be for consumption, but rather let us either be investing in agriculture that creates employment opportunities that help to boost growth, because agriculture is where we have our comparative advantage, as I would say.
Honorable Boima, let me interject here. So Ghana is about 63, 64 of the GDP, 64%. Senegal is 54%.
That's correct.
Now, you mentioned something. You said let us not borrow for consumption.
Correct.
So please explain what you mean by consumption. Give us something tangible.
Consumption, it simply means.
Mr. Kamara, also give us a real life example of this debt to GDP ratio, so that those of us who are not financially literate can understand what that means.
It's like our debt now is 1.5 billion, and then our GDP, nominal GDP is around 2 billion. When you take that 1.5 billion and express it over around 2.1 billion, it will give you the number of around 50-something percent, 53%. That's what debt to GDP ratio means. That means your income as a country is measured with your current debt stock. So our current debt stock is around 1.5 billion. When you take that as a ratio, is how we came up with the 53%.
So me as an individual, I make 50,000 a year.
Yes.
Okay, I owe on my student loan, I owe on my, so when you look at all that, you say you make 50,000, but all your debt here, you owe 100,000.
That means 53% of what you have as a country is in debt.
So it would be about $23,000 of your money, Dennis. Yeah, $23,000 of your money you have in debt. Okay.
In debt.
Okay.
And just to come to you, King, good you mentioned Ghana. Ghana is in a high debt distress ranking. However, you can see infrastructural development taking place in Ghana. You see high level of growth taking place in Ghana. You see high level of investment in human capital in Ghana. So those are the things when we say on the high side of development, when you are borrowing, even when you get to the place of a high ranking of a high debt distress, but the borrowing you have done will have the ability to repay. So Ghana is in a position to repay on their debt because in addition to the resource endowment, they have mineral wealth, they have oil. That's fine. And the things that they have done in their country, you see the level of road infrastructure. You see electrification all around the place. The cost of electricity in Ghana is by far lower than in Liberia. When we're talking about more than 35 cents per kilowatt hour in Liberia, we are still one of the highest ranking country in terms of cost of electricity. And that is a binding constraint to growth.
Okay, so you have your consumption now. So you
borrow consumption. This is when we say don't borrow for consumption. That means when you're borrowing debt and you take it to pay civil servants.
You put it in the pot.
Yeah, that means civil servants take pay, they eat it. But you have to pay back that debt. And an example is just before the just ended fiscal year at end June 30th, before it just ended, in June, on the 5th of June, the government took 50 million from the IMF as a borrowing, of which the government took 30 million of that money to distribute food. That's good, as that is to help meeting people who just can't afford. COVID-19 has impacted on the livelihood of people. Many persons have lost their job, but that's 30 million. Couldn't 30 million be maybe reallocated? Maybe say you could take 10 million on food distribution and allow the rest of the 40 million go towards investment in agriculture, where almost 75% of the population live. If those are how we can be asking ourselves the alternatives, putting 30 million of that money just to divide food in the communities. That's money that is gone in eating, just food. Yeah. You have eaten that money. It has no economic returns.
So using the Ghana example, having debt is not all that bad. It's just that what you do with the money.
Correct. That's the message. That's the message. And that's why I said, if we should be acquiring any new loan, we should bear in mind that we are around 53% now. If we go to taking new loans, let those new loans either be to expand on the road infrastructure, create more farm to market roads, create a significant, for me, when I was sitting as the Minister of Finance, the share of the budget in agriculture was so small. And I said to the president, we have to make deliberate efforts as a government. That which has the potential to creating the jobs for our people is in agriculture. We can't be giving so much minuscule of an amount in the budget to agriculture, just on administrative costs. It doesn't help us. That's why we'll continue to go within this vicious cycle, year in, year after. As a country, you're talking about running a budget of just around 500 million to date, a country that is endowed with so much resources. That means the time has come that we must begin to rethink on the economic model of our country, begin to put money where money works in terms of high economic returns. The better it's going to be for all of us as a country.
Before we go into the meat of it, go ahead, Mr. Sear. Before we go into the meat of it, just give me a brief history of Liberia's debt, because I know this whole debt issue starting with even before Firestone. So give me a little history about Liberia debt and how what we have done over the years?
In terms of a little history, you clearly see that from as far back as the late President Doe's era to President Charles Taylor, in 2006, when President Sirleaf took over, Liberia has some carrying debt of close to around 5.9 billion. And in that respect, around 5 billion, let me say 5 billion, taking over a country whose budget was just around 80 million. Our growth was in the negative. The central bank reserve was just under 5 million. A difficult period. How do you navigate as a new administration? And that's why the former President Sirleaf, we must be thankful for such leadership she brought to bear on the country's finance. And over the period of her administration, between 2006 up to June 2010, every effort was made as informing the country of the difficult task that was ahead and the set of austerity measures that was required, and also institutional reforms. Because the international partners, you have to play by certain rules.
Yeah.
And those were preconditions to receiving budget support, to receiving waiver of our debt. So the waiver of debt was not just, oh yeah, Liberia debt was waived, but there were preconditions that were being met. One of which, or several of them, will include the institutional reform and ensuring the independence of institutions such as integrated institutions, including the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission. That's how it was established, to ensure that the culture of corruption will be an issue of the past. People must be held to account for misuse of public resources. Your public procurement laws also had to be strengthened, and the institution that was to ensure that the procurement processes were free, fair, transparent in every way that lends credibility to the process of procuring across government. So that's how you had the likes of the PPCC, the LACC being established to make sure, and even the General Auditing Commission, giving them the full independence, void of overbearings from the executive, the judiciary, and even the legislature. Those were some of the reform measures that you had to take. And even within the public financial management space, the setting up of the IFMIS, which is referred to, IFMIS is the Integrated Financial Management System, where the budget is executed. And in the execution of the budget, real-time information must be made. Appropriation in the budget, lines, ministry, and agency will have to go on that platform, put in your budgetary request on the basis of the approved budgetary allocation for that, say, institution, say, Ministry of Agriculture, the amount of X was approved, and to access it, it was accessed through the IFMIS system. That IFMIS system, we work towards ensuring that it was credible, it had quality assurance. And also, why sitting for 1 year, 9 months as a Minister of Finance, issues surrounding domestic debt claims. Some people came back after debt vetting has taken place. KPMG came in and helped the government in terms of reviewing the domestic debt claims. All of that put together, in 2010, June, Liberia successfully achieved the HIPAA completion point under the IMF. That qualified us for debt waiver of close to around 4.9 billion debt waived. And because of that change, in June of 2010, our debt, total debt, was just around 300 million. After all of the waiver, renegotiation of some of the debt, our total debt stood around 300 million. So between 2010 June, 7 years that ended the Salif administration, the debt stock was close to around 800 million. That is over 7 years.
Okay.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Focus on Liberia. This is our program, FOL Marketplace. And we are in conversation with former Finance Minister Boima Kamara. Our topic is Liberia current debt. Mr. Kamara, I am paying attention more because I don't know anything about money. But because we're talking about debt, as a novice to this area, walk me through who decides, that Liberia should borrow, and walk me through also the ratification process and why.
Um, the procedure as per the law,
Mhm.
consistent with the Public Financial Management Law,
Mhm.
empowers the Minister of Finance
Okay.
to obligate the country in terms of debt. However, while it is true that you have that power as a Minister of Finance to obligate the country, there is a committee. The Ministry of Justice will have to review any debt contract that the minister is to sign onto.
Mhm.
That is reviewed, and the Minister of Justice must have a no objection approval before you proceed to obligating the country in terms of new debt. And for the ratification exercise or process, once that is reached in terms of a consensus within the executive, from review by the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Finance signs, they are now put into a handbook and sent to the legislature for their review and subsequent passage into law. It has to pass through the legislature. And then after that point, before we can now record it as a debt that has been verified and went through the due process. That's how you proceed as a country with acquiring debt, such that the any administration that comes afterward, it has to be binding on the country. You will not say, "Oh yes, I didn't sign onto this debt, so I don't take responsibility for it." No, government is continuity, and that's why we must ensure that whatever you're doing now, bear in mind that someone is going to come after you.
Yeah.
May we begin to lay the right foundation.
And my follow up to that is so we can go to your article. So the Finance Minister makes the determination and shares that with the president and
Correct.
must convince the president with realistic justification as to why he or she is making that decision.
That's correct. It must be in consultation with the president.
All right, William.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Kamara, he's setting you up. This guy is political.
But
But
that's fine.
let's go to your article. What prompted this article? Debt, life after debt.
Uh, the inspiration behind the article is just to seeing the trend. Is I just started to look at the trend in the number as to how we're moving so quick. 7 years under President Salif, the debt moved from around 300 million to 800 million. That was over 7 year period. So on average, you'll be thinking about 90 more than 90 million per year. And then when I look at the current administration, the trend in 2 years, 3 months, and I saw we move from around 800 million to 1.5 billion.
Hmm.
That's almost 700 million increase just in 2 years, 3 months. So that prompted the need to write an article and put things in a little bit of a perspective that says, yes, as good as debt acquisition is, if we are not mindful as to on what we are borrowing that money, if we are borrowing almost 700 million in 2 years, 3 months, if it is not properly targeted towards high economic returns project, we run a risk of going into debt distress very soon, and Liberia will be reclassified as a hippie country. So that is the rationale on why this article is saying our rate of growth is very high. And because the rate of growth is very high, we will begin to take decisions.
You say rate of growth, the rate of growth of the debt?
Yeah, the rate of growth of the debt, yeah.
Okay.
Just the absolute number, I just gave you the absolute number, that in 2 years, 3 months, the debt is rising by 700 million compared with 7 years.
And why is that?
Well, I believe the current administration, they are in a tight environment, and I'm fully aware of the challenging economic environment Liberia is currently facing. I can shout that. It's something I fully recognize as a former Minister of Finance, and I know what the current administration is facing. They are going through tough times, but it is important to say, in every given tough times, because it is not only unique to Liberia, all countries of the world are facing COVID-19. However, prior to COVID appearance in December of last year, Liberia was already in a state of recession. We had our growth rate cut to around 2.5%. We're talking about 2019.
Mr.
The
Boima,
projection.
Mr. Boima, some of this debt window was open in the previous administration.
That's correct. I signed on to.
But I did not say it was drawn upon. I didn't say it was drawn upon, right? So we know there's two ways with this debt. One that is that you have access to this money. It's kind of like your credit card. You have the money on your credit card, but you're not charged unless you make the withdrawal.
All right, so, disbursement.
Yeah, this disbursement. So from your administration, the window was available, but the disbursement, the level at which we pull on these disbursements have increased tremendously. Is that what I'm just trying to understand that?
Okay, so in my case,
yeah,
when I took over in May of 2016, the former minister, Kamara, he signed onto few instruments that were rectified, but not disbursed. When I took over, again within the same 1 year, 9 months, I signed onto, I think it could be close to around 10. But those instruments, they went through the legislature, they were not disbursed. But when the new administration took over, they were disbursed under them. So in this case, it is still a debt, but the new administration is the one that received the disbursement and is classified as part of the total debt stock.
Thank you, Anthony. I know you've been itchy now, so I will pass this on to you. Please to come in, please, because we are focused economic marketplace, but I think right now we will probably, from our listeners, in a simplistic way, they would think we're being political, but I assure you we're not. We're trying to understand this thing here. So Anthony, go ahead.
Well, let me crack a joke. I don't know how to avoid politics, so, because I don't know anything about, what we're talking. But let me ask the question, Boima.
Yeah.
Should the legislature ratify the debt within the fiscal year or after a budget approval? How do you account for it in the fiscal report?
By law, Section 11 of the Public Financial Management Law allows you to acquire debt within the given budget year. So let's assume in this current budget year, started July 1, 2020, and it will end June 30th, 2021. The government has already earmarked some amount of money that will come as an external loan, and they are classified as new borrowings. So under the law, it is permissible.
Okay.
And it has to go through the legislature for ratification. So in the context of the law, as long as you are in the given budget year, you can proceed either domestic financing, either through the commercial banks, or you can engage in external financing through foreign loans. So any one of those will constitute what we refer to as, at the end of the budget year, how do you compute for a budget surplus or a budget deficit? It will be total revenue, less new borrowing, less total expenditure within that given fiscal year.
Keyword, budget surplus. You talk about the constraints of the current government, why you think, the debt has grown. Is that, and for those of us who are not financial people, is that what the minister was explaining when we said dig hole, cover hole?
Well, that's a simplistic way of putting it. You dig hole, you cover hole. That means the resource envelope from the revenue side, when you're projecting, say, a budget like the last fiscal year, they had to recast the budget from the earlier projection that was passed. You reduce it close to around, I think, almost, the amount was almost around, say, more than 50, close to 100 million. Recasting that budget, it simply means revenue is not performing, or you have high expenditure pressures in terms of paying wages. And one thing I would say, just to highlight this point, King, if you have more than 50% of your budget just on salaries, that's consumption there, and it's a risk for you as a country. Why I sat as Minister of Finance, I had many days, I said, Madam President, this is unsustainable for us as a country. When you are only raising revenue just to pay people. Currently, as we speak, 290 million of the 500, I think, 10 or 20 million projected size of our budget, you have close to around 300 million to be paid on salaries. The question is, what then is the share of that on capital projects? It's so small. We can't continue to do this as a country and we expect to develop. That has to change. So that's part of the problem of a dig hole, cover hole.
Dig hole, cover hole. Okay, Dennis.
Because if you will continue on that path of digging hole, cover hole, because you are only eating, but you are not investing in yourself, either in your human resource capacity, either in your agricultural production, in the area of cocoa, coffee, along the value chain. If we begin to put money in those places, like one of the things, if I had significant, I would just say maybe if I had just a little bit of time as Minister of Finance, I promised the president that every year at least 5 million must go to co-agriculture project. If this year in the budget we set 5 million aside, say, for cocoa intervention, let's do cocoa intervention. Let's find all of the smallholder farmers, invest in them. The next fiscal period, you take another 5 million, go towards domestic rice production. Let's begin to grow rice. You put 5 million in that. You will clearly see, as a country, the importation of rice, we spend nothing less than 200 million every year to import rice. It's a big foreign exchange loss to us every other year.
But Honorable
90%.
Honorable Boima S. Kamara, you are talking about something that as we speak right now, someone may say that, hey, when you got there, you realized that there were constraints, parameters, restrictions, laws, regulations, legislature, executive, and everything like that, that would have prevented this great idea you have from coming to fruition because
I
there.
did some. I did some.
Yeah, you did some, but not to the extent for what you are speaking to.
Correct.
So if government is continuation, we want to see what this administration is going to do. But we do want to come to your article because we are scratching our heads, and we know that a lot of Liberians were scratching our head to kind of understand what you wrote on one side, but then also some of the response from Minister Twer. And so we want to look at some of those statements that were made, and so we can try to better understand this thing. So with that being said, um, the first thing is that from your article, Minister Twer responded to your article on July 30th, 2020. He responded to that. First of all, what do you think about his response overall to that article?
Um, I think that as a colleague, um, in any given civilized society, especially individuals of our kind, research and development is key. It's a key factor. So writing has to be a new way of life for us going forward as a country. When you write a scholarly technical paper and there is any divergence of opinion on what your colleague has written, it will not be to exhibit any form of belligerent posture against such writing.
Mm-hmm.
You may come back with your own rejoinder, and what I did was intentional. The time has come. In Liberia, the academic community must now rise up to begin to write on those things that will elevate our national discourse so that we can be setting the right platform to discussing crucial thematic issues of concern.
Yeah, but we are doing that now. Now we're doing that now, and we're in this place. So I want to push this. This is
Right.
this is something that Minister Twest said, and I found it interesting, right? Because it's a shift to some of these accounting stuff to the previous administration. So let me read something that he says, and let me know.
That's correct.
Minister Toy appears to blame the high debt on your administration, keeping some of this debt off the books, and that they now have to bring it onto the books. Minister Toy further said the monies that are there were from the previous administration did not recognize it in total debt owed to central bank, and as such they had a problem in taking it without a full audit. But after a lengthy negotiation between the ministry, central bank, and IMF, an understanding was reached. So this is the quote. Prior to entry into the IMF program, the IMF insisted that the government cannot continue carrying these unreconciled amounts in perpetuity, but needed to validate and accept the debt as official government borrowing from the central bank over the last decade or so, he added. So the MFDP had issues with bringing all of these amounts as debts to central bank without a full audit. Some audit had been done by KPMG, but MFDP folks still had issue with that. So, I mean, this is saying that, hey, a lot of this borrowing that you see that was the increase was really money that was already spent. And they just brought it on, but they had no control over it.
Well, let me respond in a way to say, especially on the central bank side,
Yeah.
the entire process of what you call debt consolidation,
Mm-hmm.
a real debt consolidation did not take place. The government decision to take in almost 200 plus million to add to an already legacy loan that has been there prior to Madam Salif coming in. There's a legacy loan for the central bank that the government is obligated to the central bank of around 220 plus million. Well, since one day at the central bank, up to when I left.
Wait. So the international community forgave our debt.
But we are now in a position to forgive our own debt.
Our own central bank of Liberia did not forgive our debt. What is that about?
You see that. You see that. So the point there is, on one end, we are not able to freshly pay the legacy loan of over 220 million. Then this current administration is saying they did debt consolidation and it took 200 plus million as a debt and it's sent it to the central bank. Part of that debt is what we received during the Ebola period. And they came in support of budget support. So why will you be taking a government budget support and bring it as a liability for the central bank? I will contest that if I was sitting at the central bank, that I will not permit that. Even if we will slow down the ECF program with the IMF, it has to be done correctly.
So, Thomas, well, the minister is saying that we were strapped for cash, and when we went to the international community, some way, somehow, they had a meeting with central bank, and for that money, they said we can give you more money, but in order for us to give you more money, you have to accept this central bank debt.
My brother, let me just say to you, King, my engagement with the IMF for the last 12 years,
yes,
IMF is not going to force things down your throat. When they see in you integrity, when they see in you, you know what you are doing and the extent to which the facts, the very IMF, I dealt with the IMF before leaving as a Minister of Finance. The issue of a debt came up. What did I do? I said to the IMF team and the mission team, before we can do any form of debt consolidation, our system will have to be properly audited. We'll have to ensure that every claimant that is raising issues about domestic debt, it is properly verified. That process I started. I audited the debt management system. There were issues found in the audit for which there was a recommendation for a forensic audit to have completed that process. And the IMF respected that view for the fact that I was the first minister sitting to audit the very government I was part of. I audited the IFMI system. I audited the debt management system. Those reports were compiled. In view of time that the administration came to an end, I couldn't have continued because my call of duty ended with the administration. However, I saw it befitting as an outgoing minister to provide those documents to the current Minister of Finance to take on from where I stopped. These were some of the things we did, that the process of debt consolidation must have gone through that forensic audit to ensuring that value for money was respected and that every dime to be paid out to any domestic claimant was properly verified. Then you can proceed on debt consolidation. The process of debt consolidation is that you take all some of your debt, you take away those one that we may not classify them as legitimate claims, as we have gone through the vetting process. And then we take a significant portion and say, on the basis of what we have found, this is the consolidated debt, and there is the interest rate that must apply on this at the lower terms. And then we can proceed with how government decides to address repayment.
Thank you.
And sitting at the central bank, and the point I want to make is, sitting at the central bank for the last 14 years, we've kept advocating for the need for the government to either recapitalize the central bank, and then we can scratch the legacy loan of 220 plus million that just kept coming forward, and cannot be paid. And that's why you see in the article, I said, if strangers waive or forgave our debt, then the time has come that at the highest level, all parties must sit and see that, okay, there is a need to clear this legacy loan off the central bank's book, and the government makes deliberate effort, maybe in every budget year, say we'll allocate maybe 5 million to the central bank. In the next 10 years, you will see you have at least significantly put the central bank in a position of being well capitalized.
Right. Let's talk about that legacy loan for a minute.
Yeah.
What is it? How was it acquired? And we keep moving it from year to year. How we ever
So
going to
that
get
legacy loan comes back from way do time, my brother. Woo! Yeah. Do time, 1990, some obligations took place. President Taylor came. There were other issues about debt acquired. When Madam Salif took over, the former Judah Bryan, peace be to his ashes, they met it there. They couldn't address it. When President Salif took over, she met it there. She tried, but we couldn't address it. Now the current administration has it there. And I don't think there's any will in terms of a capacity that will be able to pay on that debt. The befitting thing for us to do,
okay,
in terms of best judgment, is sit around the table, call all the parties, the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank of Liberia, the Ministry of Justice, sitting with the president and the relevant committees of the legislature, and say, colleagues, we think that this issue about the drag on central banks, debt as government's obligation to the central bank, we are not just in the position to pay this money as a government. We can waive it. However, the compensating action, that compensating action must be the government obligates itself that since the establishment of the central bank, the government has not fully capitalized the central bank. Therefore, to wait, these decisions must be such that every other fiscal year, allocate the 5 million or 10 million in the budget, let it go towards helping to capitalize the central bank over the next maybe 5 or 10 years. That would be the best way. Then you can wipe out, you will have a very clean slate with the central bank and you move that legacy debt completely. But I can tell you, man, from 200 million, if we couldn't pay 200 million, and then you add an additional 200 million to 400 plus million, it will be, I can tell you, it will be an unnecessary drag on the central bank's balance sheet.
If facial expressions are indicative of certain things that's going on right now in Liberia, I would say that we are in some serious quagmire. But let's go on to this article because I think we really want to get to the meat of this.
Hold on, William. We may have to have part 2 because I know there's so
go
much.
Ahead.
Yeah, we want to read some comments from our
viewers. Sorry,
go read some comments. But before those comments, Mr. Kamara, you mentioned something. You said, that was a powerful statement. You said, IMF based
Mr. Jai, you are coming in broken.
Hold on. You said based on your interaction with the IMF, they are not going to force anything down your throat.
All right. They are reasonable.
What they are looking for is integrity, and they want to make sure you know what you are doing.
All right.
I wonder you actually understood what that meant.
I meant just what I said. I was not mincing my word.
Okay.
Because sitting as a Minister of Finance, the IMF mission chief will come into the country and we'll sit on the table and we'll let them know we love ourselves first. In as much as you have come to help us in the macroeconomic governance, especially through proper fiscal management, we are obligated to our own country. We love our country dearly and will lead the charge in several fiscal reforms. When you do that, they respect you. And on those process of reforms, you take practical actions. And those practical actions that are enumerated, especially to have commenced 2 audits. And those audits spoke volume. And in addition to even conducting those first 2 audits of the system, I took over, There were issues of abuse of 2 million that was set aside as support that should have gone to the private sector. And I looked into what my predecessor did. The money should have been used for the private sector. When we looked into the report, we saw that there was some insider stuff taking place within the ministry, people taking money, creating fictitious businesses. That was the PSDR's report, the Private Sector Development Initiatives. And I commenced an audit of that process. I made sure all those who were found wanting, they were turned over to the Justice Ministry. You must account for every dime that you took that should not have gone to you, that should have gone to the private sector, to the needed people, to have the desired impact. When the IMF saw what I was doing, they respected me because I did not want to come to the table as the Minister of Finance. I brought to bear my 14 years of experience working with them from the central bank. And when they saw my stance on the fight against corruption, the culture of impunity, they respected my decisions, and we worked together. That's why we had a very successful program that ended November of 2017.
I knew you were.
All of the guys, especially from the Ministry of Finance, they restituted through their pay. I ensure that every dime they took was restituted from their salaries and they paid. At my level, that was what I did at the ministry level. They were turned over to the Justice Ministry for prosecution. Yes, yes, correct. Turned over to the Justice Ministry. In the Justice Ministry, oh yes, they did. All of those guys were invited. They wrote statements, and the due course took effect. And I believe and brother, I believe that time has come that the culture of impunity must stop and we must take decisive action. So it's a call that the leader must have the courage and the will, have that audacity. It could be your brother or your sister. If they misuse government's money, and let them be made to account, and that will be the right signal you send. I will tell people, man, you can't joke with this leader we have. When I sat as Minister of Finance, the first thing, the IFMES system needed to be upgraded. I took 1 million and placed it in the Afriland Bank for the purpose of ensuring that the procurement processes go through. Whoever the bidder will be, they take on to come to help us improve our IFMES upgrade. But few of the staff within the ministry decided to go and play into government money. Again, when I discovered that, they were dismissed. And every other staff who plays some complicitory role, they were made to restitute that money as well. So I'm just saying to you, if we want to stem corruption, we have to have the courage as leader to take those bold decisions. So I dismissed several people. So the record is there. I did not countenance anything that jeopardized the interests of the Liberian people, because every dollar a person steals from government, you are impoverishing another person along the line. See our people today stay in the interior. Children are staying naked. Roads condition yet to be improved. We have so much to do. We must muster the courage now as a people and as a nation to stand on corruption.
Dennis and Willem, if you guys
me,
have questions, go ahead. I got 2 questions for the minister.
let me read a few questions, few comments here from our audience, and our time is fast spent. So let's, and definitely, Mr. Minister, we want you back.
We want you back.
Maybe
We
3
need
or
part
4
two.
more
We need
times.
part 2 of this.
Yes, because we have not even gone in the article yet.
I know.
Let's get the perspective from our viewers. Nelson Wallace say a very decent man. I was able to meet him the first time after being appointed as the finance ministry. Or Smith Dawie, one of Liberia's brilliant economic minds. They're talking about you, Boima.
Humbled by that.
Smith also said we are hoping to hear his views on the current government budget, if possible. So they are setting the stage for part 2 and 3.
So the second article addresses that.
Yeah. Okay. He also said, Josh, we are talking about President. We needs this man more than he needs. He put some colorful words there, Samuel Tue. I don't know. Mr. Kamara want to get into that. Jimmy Eastman said Mr. Kamara is on record for criticizing Liberia's public debt performance in the current administration. Accordingly, the minister's recent data shows a remarkable high rate of growth in public debt within 2 years and 3 months of the Weah's administration. Would he like to comment on this matter? Yeah, I think you already did, but let me read a few more comments. He said, agriculture is Africa's largest employer. However, 70% of the population is in extreme poverty. How does the minister suggest Liberia invest in sustainable agriculture against this background? Benedict Phillips, and I hope you are marking that down. Benedict Phillips said, all of us can recite failures and shortcomings of Liberia. What positive impact can we credit to you during your tenure, Mr. Minister? And Felix Bio. Just out of curiosity.
Beer.
Okay. Felix Bio. Just out of curiosity, what resources can Liberia really boast about in terms of export to boom our economy? He continued, so what will you do differently? Should you be given a second chance at the Ministry of Finance to save Liberia from this huge debt burden? Second chances do not come around easily. Lopa Julius said, wow, you have these mines being wasted. Then you have to carry us backward. Yeah, darling Warwood, why didn't you change it as the last finance minister under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf? Still under Sirleaf, Jimmy Eastman says the Sirleaf administration and then economy was propped by the presence of several relief organizations. Most of these organizations left before the new administration took place. Hence, they took over a shrinking economy. What preparation did the finance ministry and the Sirleaf government make, knowing the vacuum that the exiting organization will create? What capital-specific project is he speaking of recommending? You have your hand full, Mr. Kamara.
Thank you. Just to share light on the extent to which we love our country and the transition, knowing fully well that the environment in which they were taken over from, first thing I would state, we experienced Ebola in 2014. We lost significant of our revenue. We lost significant of the lives of our brothers and sisters. That impacted on our foreign exchange earning capacity as a country, because our primary commodity export as iron ore and rubber that we depend on. And the global market, since then up to present, all countries that will only just rely on the exportation of just raw material and you don't add value, what we say there is no diversification in the area of value addition, you are at the risk, because your budget performance domestically, as long as UNMIL withdrew. So those are the shocks. We had Ebola shock. You had UNMIL shock, or the departure, because UNMIL's presence in the country had close to around 150 million a year injection in the local economy, either through renting, purchasing of food, and moving about in terms of other basic necessities of life that they were using. So bearing in mind that at the end of 2017, with the transition, we had a transition team in place. The former president, the incoming president, they had the team on the other side, as we had our team on the other side as the outgoing and the incoming. The government was fully abreast as to what the issues are. There were turnover notes as to what you were taking off from and what are the things you should expect. That was what we did. We did not leave a vacuum when we left office.
Mr. Kamara.
And just
sorry, go ahead. I wanted because this question has been lingering around for quite too often.
Let it learn.
Okay.
Go ahead. There are a lot of questions in there from the audience.
All right. Go ahead, Boima. Go ahead.
And then I heard one of my brothers asking question on what different would I do. I want to say everything I'm doing, even now after government, I'm not looking for government job. But I believe in my country, and I will serve my country, whether in government or outside of government. We believe in Liberia's rising. God being our help, we will all unite and put aside self. And the time has come for us to think us. So in the era of agriculture, that's what I stated. If we can just every other year in the budget take about 5 million and invest in specific area of the agriculture sector, it could be rice, it could be cocoa, it could be coffee, we'll have significant difference in terms of job creation that takes our people out of poverty. Liberia, of 4.5 million people, we have no need to worry as to when those jobs can be created, because light manufacturing is the way out. And I cited the case of Ghana, I cited the case of Rwanda. Rwanda now is the world's best case scenario, because Rwanda best fits Liberia in terms of a comparative country, almost the same level of population, size, and the same experience in terms of war. But today, if Rwanda has exited and has left on the development ladder, today they are manufacturing cars in Rwanda. Today, they are self-sustainable in the area of agriculture. Liberia too can. We just need to allocate as much as we can our resources away from recurring expenditure, which has a corporate share of our budget, and allocate more towards capital projects that do have high economic returns.
Mr. Kamara, let me read, because Frank Gibson keep coming at you. He said, you guys always talk when you are out, but never talk when you are in. Mr. Kamara is turning over notes what's considered filling the vacuum. Where did you put the first 5 million at your time? So I just wanted you to conclude with that.
The first 5 million of my time went towards private sector support. We invested in the Copper Farm, which is a local manufacturer of rubber. Instead of just taking our rubber from Firestone, all the small farm holders taking rubber to Firestone to sell, we decided that the value chain within our local economy, especially Liberian entrepreneurs. So when the statement is made, may Liberian entrepreneurs never be spectator in their own country, we took practical actions, and we took government's money and invested in the Copper's Farm, which is the only local firm that has created a plant in Liberia that is adding value to the latex rather than having just Firestone being the only sole exporter of our rubber, and they bring it back to sell it to us. So to date, I'm proud to say I took our money and invested in a local enterprise that is Liberian owned, and that created job. And to date, that firm is still in the business. They are even now planning to go to a second level. And that second level is now begin to produce PPEs. You know what that means for us as a local economy? That PPEs will now be created in Liberia. They've written proposals to the IFC to get some additional support that can elevate them to producing in Liberia, made in Liberia, PPEs, hand gloves, and other related material that is associated with rubber production.
The last comment I will read here will be a question from about 16 billion. You know, what is that? Go ahead, Mr. Sia. I can't find the comment now.
All right, if you can find it.
If you want to, just to comment on the 16 billion issue, that has been a recurring statement.
No, Mr. Boima, you can't say that. You don't know what the question is.
No,
I would. The thing is that the statement is usually that the Salim administration has 16 billion foreign direct inflows.
They said that were printed. They said some money was printed, but
during the administration. No, for the 16 billion issue, I think there are reports from Crow, there are reports from the presidential investigative team, and I think we should all look at them as Liberians and what the facts are. And all of those reports, we saw that the former governor, Nantana Petrie, had to leave office. And if there are other issues within the reports that the GSC had raised questions about, especially when it came to the 45 million mop-up exercise, how that process went, and there are still questions around them, we need to look at them.
All right, Mr. Kamara, let me come in here. This question has been lingering around so long in the political terrain about debt turnover notes. The question is, how much was left in our reserve? How much was left in our accounts? And is that something you want to comment on? Because there has been conflicting numbers on this. I really want to get it clear today because you were in charge when you got turned over.
They say you left a broke economy.
Yeah, I mean, the current government say, oh, well, you know, they turn a broke economy over to us. Was that the case?
My brother, this is what I know. Just about 3 months before the end of the administration, I took some drastic austerity measures to safeguard public funds and to ensure that the incoming administration will see money in consolidated account at the central bank. What I did, any expenditure that was above 5,000, I spoke with the president on this matter, and I got her approval that no expenditure outside or above 5,000, it has to come to me. I will have to know what you are going to spend that money before I give authorization to the central bank to disburse. All SOEs, their accounts were brought under my total control. No SOE had the spending power. I wrote all of the commercial banks where their accounts were held, and I instructed no payment must be made out of any SOE accounts without a letter from me as Minister of Finance. We did so to ensure that the incoming administration will find money in the account at the central bank to start with.
So you left them some
money.
So you left them some money, you didn't leave the accounts empty?
It was never empty.
Okay.
The records are there. And they were
the man saying that he left the money and he left the window open for the loan. So
I left money there, my brother. I can tell you, I left money there. The records are there.
And what was the reserve?
When we left the central bank in terms of its reserve, it was something close to around 250 million.
Our foreign reserve.
Yeah, the foreign reserve at the central bank was something close to around 250 million when we left.
Okay.
All
So
right.
central bank allow you guys to have that money and you still owe them 250. They could have just
okay,
taken it.
let me come to my two final questions that I've been keeping. Woman, and this is about statement made by your professional colleague, Mr. Twer. Mr. Twer recently announced to us as a people that they just had a budget surplus. And I am looking around, looking at the numbers, not being a number guy. I'm like, okay, I have to find somebody, and fortunately, you are here. Did we get a budget surplus at any time during this administration that you know of?
That statement of a budget surplus, we had to come in and provide clarity on that. And that was the basis of my second article regarding Liberia fiscal year's uniqueness and other complexities. The temptation there is, on the basis of the law, when the fiscal year comes to an end on June 30th, 12 midnight, all accounts associated with that previous fiscal year must be closed.
Okay.
However, there will be revenues to be paid associated with that fiscal year on July 1, July 2, July 3 into the new month, even though there's a new fiscal year, but people will still have to pay their revenues obligation for that previous fiscal year. So those monies, a new separate escrow account associated with the previous fiscal year should be opened at the central bank, and those monies set into that escrow account separate from the new fiscal year revenue collection, so that you cannot intermingle what comes as a prior year revenue collection that already do have expenditure claims.
Right.
In our terminology, we say they are encumbered. You don't make that error of taking cash carry forward as budget surplus. And that's why, in my experience, for the two fiscal years that ended under my watch, I had this similar problem between the Liberia Revenue Authority folks and those of my colleagues at the Ministry of Finance. On one end, we contended that the revenue that have been collected, even though the fiscal year ended on June 30th, they are all having expenditure claims. So we can classify them as a cash carry forward or a surplus. It will be wrong to do so. And by law, Section 11 of the Public Financial Management Act, it defines how you compute a budget surplus or a budget deficit. And the law states, for a budget surplus or a budget deficit, the formula says total revenue collected for that given fiscal year minus new borrowing. I mean, you take any new loan in that fiscal year, you subtract it from your total revenue, and all of the expenditure for that, also for that fiscal year, you also subtract it from that total revenue for the given fiscal year. So for the 2 year, our experience, cash carry forward, I did not classify them as a surplus because they had expenditure claims. You know, the thing is, how can you still have obligations in terms of salary arrears to people from the previous fiscal year that you haven't paid? People are still, you still have some salaries to take care of. You still have other expenditure claims. Then how will you claim to have a 10 million budget surplus? And I just thought that we needed to clarify what a budget surplus means by law. And I think this second article laid to rest what a person may classify as a budget surplus or a budget deficit, a cash carry forward arising from the previous fiscal year should not be misconstrued to mean a budget surplus. So in this case, the window of opportunity that allows you to come to a conclusion as to whether there was a budget deficit or a surplus, the law says when the fiscal year comes to an end in June 30th, between July and September, you must do all of the reconciliation So you have 3 months window as a Minister of Finance to counter-check all of the expenditure claims against the revenue when you have made sure that you got no salary arrears, you got no other obligations that you are owing any other ministry and agencies, and you balance that out. If there is any left over, and you have also subtracted your new borrowing, and you still have money left, then you can say, I have a budget surplus.
My
I
final
wonder
question. My
what is
final question. Gentlemen, let me, Dennis, you doing a follow up? I want to come in with my final question.
Let Anthony.
No, I'm asking, what is the minister trying to do by saying this is a surplus? What do you think?
I think I don't think that's the right thing to be saying. We need to just know that accurate reporting is important in terms of the quality of data. Your reporting is as equally important as what you say in your reporting on numbers to the public. And I believe the right thing to do is to report accurately and to have the trust of the people that you serve.
All right. My final question. At some point, there was this powerful joint letter addressed to our government from 9 diplomatic heavyweights, instructing them in a very tough tone that put our money back. But when a finance minister came, he said, well, that was a borrowing initiative. Have you ever borrowed money from somebody to the full knowledge of the person through a borrowing initiative, and then the person running behind you with a letter, Boima, typing something?
So that means it's a misnomer for that to be the case. You know, when we sat as former Minister of Finance, there were times that the government truly had issues about cash. And the best thing you want to do, there were donor money that were at the central bank held. And those monies, they are not for the government and you can't touch it. What we did as a responsible party, and everything we did, they were properly documented. And the documentation speaks firstly in terms of consultation with the partners. You have allocated this amount of money for the agriculture sector. It is lying there. We have need for other sector. Can we utilize this fund at this point in time to meet the need of the other sector? And our revenue collection will be tied to this money that will be taken from your donor account, such that the central bank has been given the outright instruction to automatically debit the government's account for every dime that was taken out of the donor fund. We did that. And there was not the situation that you have just stated. So sometimes I will hear people say, oh yeah, the people before us did it.
Yes.
But we did not have people writing us such a letter. That means
apparently that letter came, but you guys, managing
no,
information better than it didn't leak.
No, you can't say apparently it came. It will have gone public. I'll go public.
All right, Boima, thank you. Those would be my final 2 questions. William, what you got?
I just want to thank all of our viewers, listener comments. Some people made comments. There were actually one comment from our guy, Agassi, who said, Boima Kamara is one of the problems with the government. But we'll give a chance for you to come back on the show. We couldn't get to all of the comments. We couldn't get to our listeners. Sorry for those who tried to call in. We're going to be getting our technical line stuff up to speed. Honorable Boima S. Kamara, we want to thank you. Focus on Liberia. We're all about educating, promoting, and elevating all things Liberia. And in this show, what we try to do is just bring an objective look at what's going on in Liberia in terms of the debt situation. We're not able to get to a lot of the things that we wanted to, but we see the passion. And so we will discuss maybe you following up with part two, please. We really want to do it fast because our listeners will be in tune. So please consider that. And so I'm giving it back now to Anthony and Dennis. And once again, thank you. This is Focus on Liberia. Thanks to all our listeners.
Oh, then
Thank you.
you go
Thank you,
first.
King.
I will close it. I always have something to close with.
Mr. Kamara, I know you have we couldn't even get into the depth of your article, the first one, let alone the second one. So anything that was really burning that you wanted to really touch on that we couldn't reach, please go ahead.
Well, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity, and just to say that we must believe in our country, Liberia. We must all rally around our government. And I say even to President Weah many times, I'm always ready, and I will always do all I can to share my perspective and provide suggestions on the way forward to ensure that he succeeds. And that's my core nature. In life, I believe supporting the head, and when the head succeeds, everyone succeeds. The time has come for us to put aside our individual um, craving and think Liberia, believe Liberia, and serve Liberia well.
And how
Thank
is
you.
life after the finance ministry?
Well, life has been so good. Uh, One of the reasons why I'm in the States today is that I came purposely in pursuing a second academic degree. And on May 20th of this year, I completed my second master degree in applied economics with a
So,
concentration in financial economics from the Johns Hopkins University. And I
So,
believe with this acquisition of a new training, my human capacity has been elevated and my country needs me most. And I've already begun giving back. Currently, the University of Liberia has gone online with e-learning, and I have begun teaching at the graduate school, and I'm teaching financial management as we speak within the current semester.
thank you.
thank you so very much. So, woman, is there any possibility we can do this again next Saturday?
Well, I look forward to that.
Thank you so very much. Dennis?
No, we just can't thank our guests enough, and
Mhm.
thanks to all our audience. I know there are a lot of people who wanted to say something that we couldn't get to, but fortunately, Mr. Kamara will be back next Saturday, and we'll be glad to continue on the discussion. Thank you
Thank you.
again for coming. This is what we do here at Focus on Liberia. We too, we are open to the to provide a little help we can in our week way, even away from home, to do the best we can, so that our country become that glorious land of liberty that we all dream of. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right,
Shalom.
folks, this is what I have for you as we try to leave you here. That ugly war is called corruption. To some people, it's a beautiful word. I don't know about you. Dennis Jah hate that war. For Williams, he's like, hell no. I don't like that war either. Where am I going with this? You want to know. It is that word that we hear all the time, even when we were in grade school. I don't like that war. Because that war is suffocating that country we all love. It is that war for which we can get all the money that we want to build that country. One man was telling me earlier, I did something about it when I was there. When I looked, I couldn't find where the money went. I acted. I made people to restitute the money. I made recommendation for prosecution. Can we all do that? Maybe when we all do. Maybe that war will be chased out of Liberia. But I read an article on front page that said, rest in peace, corruption. I don't know what that means. What does it mean to you? My name is Anthony Sear. Yeah, I focus on Liberia. Our goals are simple: to educate, to elevate, to promote all things Liberia. But there is a song that Boima like, that we are living with you, and that song say we are all Liberians. Listen to that song 1 minute and tell me thank you later on, and for also reminding you that coronavirus is real. I'm answering. Dennis also is here. William is here, and Boima as well saying bye-bye. We love you all. Thank you, folks.
Bye-bye.
We are Liberians.